Good evening and welcome. You're watching NDTV. I'm Vedant Agarwal, and our special focus on the show this evening. Well, the Delhi government is considering a tax on vehicles entering the national capital in peak office hours. Now, this is a proposal that has sparked the long debated issue of congestion tax. Well, the onus once again has been put on taxpayers to solve Delhi's traffic nightmare and also the ramifications it has on the pollution here in the capital. But of course, many have pointed out that the government's move should have been to encourage people and incentivize citizens of the capital to switch to public transport and not consider a tax on vehicles entering the national capital during peak hours. And well, many have also pointed out that this would in a sense help streamline traffic, which is something that has been demanded for a long time by Delhiites here in the capital. What does it really mean for you and I, and what do experts think about it? Well, joining me on the show this evening, Ms. Dikshu C. Kukreja, urban planner, Managing Principal, CP Kukreja Architects. Also with me, Zerin Osho, Director, India Program, Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development. Mr. S. Velumurugan, Chief Scientist and HOD, Traffic Engineering and Safety, CRRI, is also with us. Thanks very much all for being with us. Mr. Velumurugan, going across to you first. Many have pointed out time and again that there should be a concerted effort to incentivize people to switch to public transport. But this move to, in a sense, impose congestion tax, many would say that this is a knee-jerk measure, and a problem like Delhi's traffic problem or the pollution crisis needs round-the-year attention and round-the-year effort to, in a sense, trigger some sort of a behavioral change in helping people, switch to public transport. How do you see this entire move? It's still a proposal, it's not been implemented yet, but the fact that the Delhi government is mulling a congestion tax, what's your response? Mr. Velumurugan, go ahead.
Yeah, this is, I heard this particular congestion tax, which is being contemplated for implementation. Basically, this is a move as such is a good move, which has been implemented by some of the developed countries, starting from Singapore in 1975 and then London in 2003 and subsequently Stockholm in Sweden and also some Norwegian cities. So where if in India, in Delhi especially, if somebody wants to implement it, it's a good step, provided we happen to do a proper integration of the public, enhancement of the public transport and integration of the tickets, which we are actually being charged in the, be it metro, because we have about 390 kilometers of metro network available. Yes. And also DTC bus has been enhanced to now 8,000 buses. So in these, the ticket integration is also one important thing. And also ITS, using ITS, we need to do a monitoring of the major corridors. That major corridors is one thing which we need to identify and try to go about in doing it. And of course, as being contemplated for implementation with specifically non-polluting vehicles and two-wheelers exempted, is a move which can be tried, but with all the riders in place, if we do the implementation in best way.
Ms. Zerin Osho come in on this, and looking at this entire issue from the perspective or prism of the air pollution crisis as well. Experts like yourself have pointed out time and again that this problem is one that needs round-the-year attention. Knee-jerk measures like, say, the odd-even scheme or now this congestion tax proposal, this will do little in solving the pollution problem, because we need to tackle the pollution problem at its very source level. That is something that should be the focus of the government and not sort of mulling over knee-jerk measures like this one.
Thank you, Vedant, and very happy to be back. I tend to agree with you and with Mr. Velumurugan, because this is a very good interim step in the right direction. Use this as an interim measure to eventually reach to better standards and electrification of transport. That should be the focus. Now, what's going to happen is, because we have seen this play out in several different, the West and the developed parts of the world. And I want to take the example of London City. Two concentric circles, the core central London being taxed at a higher rate compared to the outer circumference of central London. You now have seen longer term impacts of that policy. I think what will be critical for the government is to come across the price. The price point, and determining the price point is going to be a very important measure in sort of making sure that the integration, as Mr. Veluvergam pointed out, is going to be critical. And then the second thing that I think the government should very seriously consider is the integration of two-wheelers. Two-wheelers are a significant part of the problem. And we still do not have 100% electrification or electric transport in the two-vehicle segment. That would be critical, integrating that.
I think those are several important points you've made, because many a times it's also pointed out that making, say, metro ticket prices cheaper and sort of incentivizing people to switch to public transport, that is also important. But I think the point you're making, a good interim measure, certainly. But Mr. Kukreja, come in on this point. Do you see this move, in a sense, significantly helping in streamlining traffic, particularly during peak hours? Because, I mean, during the office hours, it's almost a nightmare to, say, travel from Delhi to the adjoining areas. And it's impossible for people to commute. I mean, it takes almost 2 to 3 hours if you want to go from Delhi to Gurgaon during the peak office hours. But, the larger question of streamlining the capital traffic, do you see this move significantly impacting that?
So, Vedant, thank you. And I'm going to give a different perspective from what the two other panelists have offered. Because I feel that, if I will take a parallel of a human body. You have a terrible health problem and you're, let's say, bleeding, having internal bleeding. You go about putting band-aids from one part of the body to another. That's not going to solve the problem. Our city is becoming, Delhi is becoming increasingly unlivable, and we all realize that. And I personally think that these kind of measures, in the short term, yes, it appears, I'm only going to concede that it appears it could be a good solution, but frankly not. First of all, if you're comparing with the success of London, London's morphology and Delhi, they're two very differently planned cities. So I don't see the comparison being that appropriate. The second aspect is that, on the one side, in our thriving democracy, we offer freebies. We make unauthorized colonies authorized. We go about, offering other freebies during elections. And then to a hardworking middle class, which a lot of majority is on fringe of a budget. They work on tight budgets monthly. You keep adding these kind of additional expenses. What are we trying to do here? I would rather say that we need to look at the problem in a more holistic manner. First of all, we all know that the surface area of roads, the length of roads in Delhi is more than any other city in India. But how many of these roads are actually effectively used? There is congestion because there is bad traffic management.
Yes.
There are cars which are parked in the middle of the road, and so on and so on. I think we all know the behavior of traffic discipline in Delhi is probably the worst in the country. So I would say if we could have solved these issues, automatically that same mathematical surface area that we have of roads would have resulted in a much better traffic circulation. Now, when we come to about, traffic coming from NCR into the city and you want to tax them, well, either give more job opportunities on the fringes. Let's have our National Capital Region NCR Planning Board work effectively. It's been around for a couple of decades. What have they done to solve this problem? That needs to be looked at. And even within the city, I would say that we need to have better public transport. We all know how much, how unsafe our women and children feel in the city.
Sure.
So I appreciate the Delhi Metro expanding its network, but the last mile connectivity is still not a successful measure implemented. If we can do that, why would somebody waste their money driving single to their office, one person driving in a car? They would love to take the public transport, but we need to improve our public transport.
Absolutely. I think that's a critical point, and you've made several important points. And Ms. Osho, would you like to respond to what Mr. Kukreja said about emulating, a model model that that Western countries have adopted, given the fact that the entire geography, so to speak, as far as the capital is concerned, is very different, say, from a London or a Stockholm?
No, absolutely. And Mr. Kukreja, while I agree with you that, these are two different parts of the world that I'm comparing, India is very ambitious and wants to become a superpower. So if we are not able to solve for some basic challenges, and as I mentioned earlier, the challenges that you are pointing out and the solutions that you're pointing out to, they require a long time, a long period. We have seen what happened with the CAQM. We have seen what the Delhi's air pollution condition is, and this is just before Diwali. It's going to go worse from where it is currently. So while I fully agree with you that those are the things that need to be implemented on a longer scale, currently in the near term, if we can have a congestion tax, absolutely. And as far as the costing and the budgeting aspect that you're talking about, I fully agree with you. I think having the Delhi government work with experts and economists to figure out what is the right pricing, because we've also seen when the Motor Vehicles Act was revised for a higher amount of challan for speeding, jumping the red lights, there was a lot of pushback from the general public in Delhi and so on and so forth. But we've also seen that a higher price reduced that number of challan. Having two-wheelers, which I completely agree with you, is a not that well off a section of society using the two-wheelers, but two-wheelers unfortunately form a significant amount of emissions and PM 2.5.
Yes.
I would say let's do a cost-benefit analysis. Let's say we do the amount of money a family or a household is going to be spending on adding this extra tax to their monthly expenditure versus the hospital bills that are now emanating from children as young as 10 years old going to hospitals. In the interim, this is where we need to be. And yes, we don't have to follow what London has done. Absolutely not. But that is a good example for us to understand what were the economics that were involved. London itself was also extremely polluted at one point in time.
So Mr. Kukreja, a quick response from you, and then I bring in Mr. Velumurugan. The point that Ms. Osho is also making, that this is an emergency that we're dealing with. It's a medical emergency, and we need whatever we can to, in a sense, curb the menace of pollution that we face on a yearly basis now.
So I will say here, I agree with Zarin. I don't completely disagree. The problem that I see is that, we lack, unfortunately, the discipline. The moment we will implement a policy and we see even small results out of it, we are going to get content. When I say we, I mean the authorities that are coming up with these policies. And the danger that I see there is complacency. The fact of the matter is we need to address these issues more holistically. And my personal feeling still remains that those people who are going to be spending money, and they are spending so much money on petrol and coming in a private car or a two-wheeler, given a choice, I'm sure they wouldn't want to do that anyways. But let's give them that healthy, safe choice. We need to have better public transport. We need to have that integration of ticketing, which was just mentioned, and many other aspects which allow people to come to work in a better manner. Unless we do that, you're again burdening them. First, they are paying for this gasoline, which anyway they are not that happy about, and now they are going to pay a congestion tax also. So my worry is that, yes, it's a good solution, but if we take it as a permanent solution, then that's the sad part, which we often end up doing. The simpler thing for me would be increase the challans. When people are not disciplined, they are the ones who need to pay, not the poor middle class who is, unnecessarily being taxed more.
Okay.
Why have better traffic management of the roads? Why are cars just parked in the middle of the road, or, markets crowded in that manner? Let's provide parking infrastructure. Why are multi-level car parks lying empty and cars parked on the street, etc.?
In fact, that larger issue of infrastructure and looking at our road infrastructure and planning, I think that's extremely important. And Mr. Velumurugan, come in on this, because, when our authorities look at the road infrastructure as well, our emphasis a lot is on, say, flyovers, and the myth is that more flyovers will reduce the traffic burden. But the fact is that it will attract more personalized vehicles, and that's what many studies have pointed out as well. So, would you say that our government needs to perhaps look at some sort of an overhaul in terms of understanding our road infrastructure, particularly in metro cities?
Yeah, that is really an important issue which you flagged. Actually speaking, if you see Delhi's road network, compared to the many of the metropolitan cities across the world, even including next to Tokyo. It is in terms of their road length, 33,000 kilometers of road length, and which includes actually many such about 1,800 kilometers of major road network. So what it provides is, it is giving you options for a commuter to have alternative routes, which is possible only in Delhi as compared to many other cities. Whether you go to Mumbai, Bangalore, you don't get that luxury. So considering that fact, we should not be only thing, as was pointed out by two our experts, it is a solution which has to be done with a lot of caution. At the same time, it should, this kind of solutions are expected to be implemented on certain corridors where there is a possibility of alternative routes are available. People can use it. And also integration of the other measures is very essential, including the parking, metered parking has to be there at that corridors where you are implementing, so that people will be discouraged from using their own vehicle. And if you have a good public transport made available along with that thing, people, there will be some tendency for carpooling will happen. And that is one thing government is also contemplating, I'm told. So that is an important thing which need to be done. So you cannot say that after the fund collection, I will be doing the measures.
Sure.
You need to do some basic good improvement measures in the ground before going for congestion tax.
I think that's an important point. And before I get to the pollution aspect also and bring in Zerin, quickly, Mr. Kukreja, on our public transport ecosystem, that's something that you briefly touched upon earlier as well. We need a relook at that as well, given the fact that, many have also pointed out simple things like, having paratransit, having more footpaths, plus, of course, making public transport more pro-people. I think that is also extremely important, and transforming, in a sense, that entire ecosystem to make sure there is lesser burden on the roads.
Absolutely, Vedant. You've pointed out very good ideas there. And I would say that, this whole aspect of public transport needs to be looked at holistically. By the way, when we were talking about London implementing this congestion tax, what they in parallel did was they increased their bus fleet by a third. 33% increase in bus fleet, only then it worked very well. But yes, in terms of holistic public transport, I would say this integration of metro with what I've been saying since a long time, the last mile connectivity, that it should be easy for me to, let's say, ride a bicycle from my house to the metro station, park my bicycle there and take the metro almost to work, or again, use another cycle to get there. We need to have dedicated cycle tracks. We need to have other means of transport, the integration of buses and the ticketing, which was mentioned between buses and metro needs to be done. So there are many such aspects that need to be done. Why, I would just say that we introduced BRT. We took it as an inspiration from Bogota in Colombia.
So I think that's an important point you're making, that this cannot be seen as an isolated measure. The infrastructure has to evolve with it as well. Zerin Osho, the last word to you quickly, because there is this sort of complete lack of understanding. Many would say that it's stubble burning that contributes the most to the pollution here in the national capital, and that you'll have these anti-smog guns and these smog towers, but they have little effect on curbing pollution, because we do not have that understanding that it's vehicular pollution also that contributes more than 25% to Delhi's pollution. So we need to tackle that at the source level, and that is what should be the priority of the Delhi government.
Absolutely. And, what Mr. Kukreja is saying is absolutely where I am coming from. I'm in full agreement with him. I think what I'm trying to drive home, the point that I'm trying to drive home here is, we are in the middle of a climate crisis.
Yes.
The air in Delhi is unbreathable. There are people, younger folks who are young parents, first-time parents, they are forced to leave Delhi and move to other cities around the country because they do not want their kids to be subjected to Delhi's air. These have long-term impacts on the growth of the national capital. In the interim, we need to have measures that slowly move the needle on all of these areas, that would be ideal. The infrastructure development, having dedicated bicycle paths, last mile transportation, absolutely. But what needs to be done now is to cut hospital bills, is to cut the number of people that are leaving Delhi, and not just Delhi. This is true for all major cities in India. You cannot have your jobs be in places like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and the traffic not moving. I mean, and also there needs to be something said about cultural change.
Yes.
The time I travel in Bangalore, there is a higher acceptability of executives, CEOs wanting to go to work on a bicycle. You try that in Delhi. It's unacceptable. I have never, I don't know if anybody else has, but I personally don't have, do not have an example to cite when it comes to higher earning executives in big multinational companies
But
or
then
the
again,
government
that's
for that
also a
matter.
lot to do with, of course, cultural change, yes, but how much of our infrastructure is actually supporting that sort of change? I think that's also important, isn't it, Zarin?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm saying all of this goes hand in hand.
Yes.
But currently, given the situation we find ourselves in, starting with something that can drive a longer term change is the right way. If you are going to tax somebody, and I fully agree with Mr. Kukreja, this is not the problem of the people. This is something that should have been thought out much before infrastructure was being developed.
Yes.
But currently, the situation we find ourselves in, this is a good interim step to take forward with the longer term intention of electrifying transport.
I think that's a good note to perhaps end the discussion on, that it's a welcome interim measure, but we need to look at more long-term solutions, because this problem will not be solved with these isolated measures. Thanks very much, Mr. Kukreja, Mr. Velmurugan, and Zarin Osho for being with us on the show this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And well, before we slip into a break, we'll leave you with these visuals of the Dussera celebrations coming in from across India.